What is up, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the Superdraft Breakdown Show, where I'm going to be breaking down today's NBA slate over on Superdraft. If you haven't signed up for it yet, making bad life choices, sign up using the promo code Grinders. Get a free 100% deposit bonus if you deposit $150 or any number between $1 and $50. So that means you deposit $40, you get a $40 deposit bonus. If you deposit $50, you get $50 deposit bonus. Anything between $50 and $150, you only get $50, but if you get to $150, you get $150, and that's a bonus that you can just play through, and it's yours. No drip system, not the 4% stuff. You can immediately throw it into concerts or contests. So if you want, deposit $150, play $300 the first day, just let it ride, and whatever you win is yours to keep. You can withdraw immediately, but I suggest you keep playing because there's overlay almost every single day. The contests are not as sharp as they are over on DraftKings, over on FanDuel, because guess what? Some people just don't have the time to play multiple sites, unless you're me. I love Superdraft. I play it every day. Almost took it down last night. Went from winning 15 grand to the last 20 minutes. I ended up winning like $200. But you know what? That's enough for 200 things off the dollar menu in the state of Oregon. No sales tax over there. I know, I used to live there, but we got a nice little, 6, 8, whatever game slate. I don't know. I can't remember. Still have some injury news that we're waiting for, but I'll kind of go through that as we're going through today's slate. But we got a fun one here. Super draft format, it's all based on multipliers. So play whoever you want the entire time. Swap out, mass player swap for anyone. No worry about 2v2 swaps, trying to figure out how to adjust your lineups later on because salary is making it a little bit tough. All you have to do, swap one guy for one guy. Swap two guys for two guys. Doesn't matter. Can do anything. 3 guards, 3 forwards, 1 center. And just, as the blender would say, play whoever you want. But we got a nice little slate here. It's pretty interesting. Obviously, the Golden State news is affecting the slate a ton. The multipliers haven't been adjusted as much as I think they should have. Without Curry, without Oubre, someone's got to score. That's how basketball works. Points are going to be scored. Some person has to do that. So today's slate versus Memphis, I will have a few guys that I'm very interested in over on Golden State. But you know what? Let's just go ahead and start breaking it down. I got a nice little spreadsheet using RG's projections. All it simply is RG's median, floor, and ceiling projections multiplied by the multiplier, and boom, that's the number we get. Pretty simple here. We'll start off with center. You get one of them. So that's where we always go first. The clear top option to me is Vooch. Karl-Anthony Towns, not too far behind, but I'm planning on playing him at forward because he is a fantastic play. Went for 60 last night at 1.25x multiplier. I think he ended up with 80 over on Superdraft. So Vooch is the clear top option. They might be without Fournier. They might be without Ross. They could be without Aaron Gordon. They'll probably without MCW. So lots of guys that are out of there that are eating up a bunch of usage. And Vooch, matchup versus Brooklyn, one of the best you can possibly get as a center, one of the fastest paced matchups, one of the worst defensive teams in the NBA. So he is the clear top option for me to cash. I'm probably using a bunch of them in tournaments because you just look at the rest of the guys and not as great options. Yes, you can use Cat at the center position, which is probably what I'll do a decent amount. You can use Porzingis. His price is dropping down. His multiplier is decent. Matchup versus Portland is fantastic, though. He's going to be going up against that terrible Cantor defense. Maybe they end up throwing out Covington on him, but there's a clear size mismatch there. So Porzingis, while he offers you not the greatest in the world floor, he does offer you the highest ceiling of any player on the slate. He can get those 50, 60-point games at any given time. And a matchup versus Portland on the second end of back-to-back is the perfect spot to do it. Porzingis, one of my favorite tournament plays, especially in lineups where you aren't using Luka, because we know that those bad Luka games is generally the good Porzingis games. So nice little rule to set when you're making lineups, either Luka or Porzingis, but not both, although they can both go off. There was one 80-point game where Luka had and Porzingis went off for a 60-point game. But in all likelihood, if the game's staying close, if you have Cantor or Lillard or someone over on the other side, bring it back with Porzingis if you're not using Luka. That's simple. They really made the multipliers a lot tougher as of recently. So there's not as much giant disparity between guys. Like you aren't going to have multiple guys that are 10 points projected above like the 5th or 6th price guy. Today's slate, we have Wiggins projected for a few more points than everyone else, and he's going to be pretty much a lock and load for me, but he's not way above everyone else. So right now, this slate, yawn early. This slate, Jokic is in play. He can always put up a 70-point game, but more than likely is going to be around the mid-50s range. He did put up a 65-point game against Chicago, so he is in my tournament pool. Not the greatest play, not with Vooch on the slate, but he's still very much in play. Sabonis, 1.25x multiplier. He's shown a big ceiling. He's facilitating a ton in this offense. Triple-double in what, 5 of the last 6 games? No, that's hard. 2 of the last 3 games. He's getting double-digit assists almost every single game, so Superdraft, kind of a mix between DraftKings and FanDuel scoring. So like FanDuel, 3 points for a block, 3 points for a steal, minus 1 point for a turnover. But like DraftKings, 3.5 points for a three-pointer, 1.5 points for assist, 1.25 points for a rebound, and you get the triple-double and double-double bonus. So a little bit of a mix between both, kind of something to go off of there if you use DraftKings projections or FanDuel's projections. You're going to be pretty similar to what it is, but I put a little bit of an emphasis on high multiplier guys. They can get a few blocks, they can get a few steals, that hit a lot of trays. It's that simple. So guys like Markkanen, I don't have him highlighted right now, but he's a guy that's still in play, getting 30 to 35 minutes. Match versus Denver isn't bad. It's not a great pace matchup, but he can get hot from behind the arc. He can make 6-7 3-pointers, and at 1.65x multiplier offers him a ton of ceiling. So he's a guy I don't have highlighted, but is in play. Valanciunas, they keep dropping his multiplier lower and lower, but Golden State is a good matchup for him, especially with everyone injured. He's a guy that I'll throw into game stacks. If I'm using multiple Golden State guys, maybe I use John Morant and Valanciunas. Even though it's a fairly low multiplier, he does have that 60-point ceiling before the multiplier, so he can get it done here. Gobert, second in a back-to-back, a little bit worried about not a high enough multiplier, but he can have that 70-point game like he did when he put up 28 rebounds. Still not someone that I'm terribly interested in. Bam, still like could end up playing a few less minutes. He's fine. He's not great. He's not terrible. Plumlee, they've been really restricting his minutes and giving them to Isaiah Stewart. So Plumlee, even though he does everything, he can get blocks, assists, rebounds, points, can contribute all over the offense, and he's going up against Houston. Not fully making my cut. I may have a few shares of him in Houston stacks because that game has a fairly close spread. Seeing Houston favored is a very weird thing considering how many games they've lost. But Plumlee, if you really want to use him in a game stack, he's fine. Cantor, low enough multiplier where I probably will stay away from him entirely. Maybe have one lineup in a game stack. But all these guys are kind of just off the map. It's really these guys right here that are the ones that are in play. We only have 7, 8 center options, and most of them are power forward and center eligible. So I'm likely to go overweight on Vooch, probably end up with about 65, 70% of them going up against Brooklyn, especially if Fournier is ruled out, especially if Ross is moved out. But that's pretty much center here. We'll move on over to forward. Again, guys, any questions, go ahead, drop them into chat, and I'll get to them throughout the show. Even if it's about March Madness, which I don't know anything. I just put a whole bunch of money on it for no apparent reason with zero knowledge, but it is what it is. You gotta go where the edge is. Forward, Wiggins the clear top option. We know that Curry and Oubre are most likely out. They're both doubtful right now. Matchup versus Memphis, decent matchup. Wiggins gonna be taking all the shots in the world. We saw this when all the guys were out. What was it, last season? Without Clay, without Steph, without everyone pretty much. Wiggins was taking the brunt of the workload. He's going to take a lot of shots. Yes, he could end up failing. Yes, he's going to be heavily owned, but doesn't really matter to me. The only way I wouldn't end up playing him is on lineups where I have no one from Memphis, which there'll be a few, but I'm still probably going to have about 70% ownership in Wiggins, 70% ownership in Towns, who are the clear top options. Butler is an interesting play. We currently have him projected for 58 points median outcome. I will probably end up using him in cash. It's between him and Jeremy Grant. But Butler is definitely a potential cash game play. 1.15x multiplier isn't great, but it's match versus Indy, which is a decent matchup. And he can put up a triple-double. With Bam back, it makes it a little bit less likely that he's going to go for a ceiling game of 75 points. But it's still possible. It's definitely a guy to keep in mind. Both the Dallas guys very much in play. Jeremy Grant is a guy that I really like today. Jeremy Grant, 1.45x multiplier, matchup versus Houston. I know I play him a lot, and he crushes my heart and soul all the time. But I'm going right back to the well. Multiplier is a little bit too high given his ceiling, given his utilization, or given how much he's used recently. Matchup versus Houston, perfect spot for him to get right. very involved in the offense. If this game stays close, which it's projected for a fairly close spread, Houston just not great defensively, and they run at a pretty fast pace. So Jeremy Grant is a guy that I'll be using quite a bit in tournaments. Sabonis, same thing, again, facilitating a ton. 60, 70 point ceiling now that he can get 10 assists. Gets a few steals in there, boom, even higher ceiling. So Sabonis is a guy I'm going to use. Aaron Gordon, I currently have highlighted. I'm not sure if he's going to play today. But they gave him 31 minutes last night. It would surprise me if they're going to give him 30-plus minutes again. 1.6x multiplier, given his role in this offense, given the fact that they really don't have a ton of guys that can run the point. They'll let him run the point. I mean, Randall will run the point a little bit, but realistically, he's not a great facilitator. He's not a great player. He's not a great fantasy player. So he's not going to be doing a ton of that offense. If Gordon's playing, if Fournier or Ross are ruled out, which is definitely possible, Ross missed yesterday. Fournier was questionable for most of the day and then got ruled in. So it wouldn't surprise me if they're giving Ross the day off and they're going to give Fournier the day off today. But any number of things can happen. As you can see, I have Fournier highlighted. Both Gordon and Fournier are mostly in play if Ross, Fournier, or Gordon get ruled out. If they all end up playing, then I still think that they're a little bit interesting. It's a matchup versus Brooklyn. It's going to be high scoring. Fournier can put up a massive outing at 1.65x multiplier. Gordon can put up a massive outing at 1.6x multiplier. Ross, I think, is at 1.6x multiplier. We don't have him here because we're kind of expecting him to be out. There he is right there, 1.6x. But any one of those guys, if any of them end up missing, I really like the other two guys. And it's a nice way to stack it up since I'm going to be using Vooch, since I'm going to be probably using a decent amount of Harden and Kyrie. Just kind of a way that I'm building my lineups. Levine, ton of usage, matchup versus Denver, is not great defensively, does run at a slow pace, 1.25x multiplier. We know that any given game he can shoot third of the ball 30 times. Outside of that, Christian Wood, he's fine. I'm worried about his minutes. They played him, 30 minutes the other night. Maybe they give him more minutes tonight. I don't know, honestly. It's a little bit up in the air. Houston's a tough one to predict. But if he does end up getting a full workload, mid-30s minutes, then 1.35x obviously offers a little bit of upside. Hardaway Jr., not really a guy I'm looking at. He's fine. He can shoot. High multiplier. Not terribly interested, but definitely in play. Draymond, too low of a multiplier. Steph not being in there. Oubre not being in there. Draymond's role isn't really to actually score the ball, so we're not really getting a huge uptick in that. And he's mostly a facilitator who gets boards. And I don't think that they're going to be able to do too much with him here. The multiplier is far too low. If it was at 1.5, I'd consider him a lot more. But as of right now, not a huge guy I want in tournaments. Thad Young, same thing. Sadiq Bey can get blocks, can get steals, can get boards, and can shoot the ball. So he's a guy that matchup versus Houston, fast-paced matchup, could see a lot of shots from behind the arc. He's a guy that at this high of a multiplier, because of the volatility, because of the 3 points for blocks and steals, because of the 3.5 point 3-point bonus, he's a guy that's very much in play in tournaments. Porter Jr. is fine. Markkanen already talked about him. Plumlee already talked about him. Melo, if McCollum's ruled out, this is a high enough multiplier where I could definitely see using him. He could become one of my core plays if McCollum is ruled out because it's second in a back-to-back. But again, we don't have that news. We'll have to wait and see on it. After that, there's really not a ton in here. Not a lot of guys that I want to end up using. Brooks can go off. Bridges had a big game last night, but they're few and far between. He's fine. Covington can get a whole bunch of steals, can get a whole bunch of boards, can make some threes, but not really someone I want to use. Duncan Robinson, unless Bam or Butler get ruled out, probably not going to get there. Siakam, we don't know what his minutes are going to be like with him returning. Kleber, high multiplier, but not really a great point per minute guy. All these guys just don't really make the cut. Superdraft, not everyone's in play because of the multiplier system in any given day, depending on how tight the multipliers are, depending on how much mispricing there is. You generally won't find many guys that are going to be core plays. Right now I have 10, 12 of them with some outlier guys, but that's at the forward position. It's pretty cut and dry. We look at Wiggins, Katz, Butlers, Kristaps, all their multipliers and median projections are between 7 and 12 points higher than Hardaway, than Draymond, than Thad Young. Again, things can change. I don't mind taking a few chances on Golden State guys, but more of them are at the guard position. Let's move on over there right now. Checking out guard. Harden, top option. Been getting triple doubles like crazy lately. getting just boatload of points. I think he's averaging over 65 over the last 5. Like, it's just a spot where he has had a triple double in 5 of the last 6 games. He's playing a great level right now, even at a 1x multiplier. People always ask me how many low multiplier guys can you use. It's different slate to slate. Like, it's different every single day. And today, like, I'm willing to use Harden, Luka, both of them. Like, I have no problem using both of them in the same lineup. Even Dame, Vooch, Cat, like, you just look at how much mispricing there is on any given slate, and that's kind of what tells you how many low multiplier guys you can end up using. But Harden, top option for cash, probably a great option in tournaments, even though he's going to be heavily on. Donovan Mitchell, too high of a multiplier, especially if Conley ends up missing. We don't have that news yet, but if Conley ends up missing, I will absolutely use some Donovan Mitchell. You don't even have to worry about the blowout as much with Siakam and Van Vliet coming back. The Raptors are more at full whatever, and the Jazz are on the second of a back-to-back. So don't know how much Mitchell I'll end up using. Right now, he's my top or one of the top options for cash and a pretty good option in tournaments. Kyrie, any lineup where I'm not using Harden, most likely means that Kyrie had a pretty decent game because Orlando's not great defensively. They're pretty hindered right now. Got a lot of injuries. Luka, 1x multiplier, I don't know. Like, he's fine. He's not great. It's a match versus Portland, so he can go full Luka, go with a 70-point game. But I'm still on the fence at how much ownership will actually end up with him. Edwards has just been playing fantastically. He's young. He's playing almost 40 minutes a night. I know it's the second of the back-to-back. That wears me about 1.6x multiplier. He might be my top option for tournaments. He might be my top option for cash. He might be above Harden. He's a guy that I will almost certainly end up using in cash today just because the usage is there. The game was there last night. He might be chalky, but he just offers you a decent floor and a decent ceiling because he's putting up 25 to 30 shots almost every single night. He's got the volume in spades, even if he's not a great shooter. He did have a good shooting output last night, which is why he absolutely crushed, had close to 100 super draft points, which rarely happens. But he's just a guy that can go off in any given matchup just based on volumes if he has a hot shooting. Again, second in a back-to-back. Shooters tend to shy away from a little bit, but he's young enough where I think he's probably fine. I think he's 19 years old. When I was 19 years old, I couldn't play 2 games in a day, but also I was fat and out of shape and still am. But that's beside the point. Jordan Poole, likely be one of the shocker guys. High multiplier, going to get a boatload of minutes because Steph being out and Oubre being out. Just makes sense at this high of a multiplier. He's going to get a ton of usage. So he's a guy that you can definitely look into. Booker, big night last night. Bad Minnesota team playing at a high pace. Perfect up spot for him. 1.35x, just the right amount of multiplier while have him sprinkled in tournaments and have him as a bring back a lot with Edwards and with Towns. Damian Lillard, 1.1x multiplier. If McCollum misses, he's a fantastic play. Gets a little bit of a bump. Ja Morant, been a little bit up and down, but this is the perfect get-right spot. It's a fast-paced matchup versus Golden State, who's terrible defensively and missing a lot of guys. If this game ends up staying close, he can put up 35 real-life points at a 1.5 multiplier or 1.4x multiplier. Great play. DeLon Wright, don't have him highlighted, but he's a guy that I'm probably going to be on more and more as the day goes through. Like, doing research into him already. What he needs at this multiplier is 35 points. Should he get that? Yes. Can he get way more? Absolutely. It's matchup versus Houston. He's a guy that'll likely throw into game stacks. Fournier, again, all depends on Aaron Gordon and Terrence Ross. If both of them are out, I think Fournier is a fantastic play versus Brooklyn. Has a 50-point ceiling. He's going to take 20 shots almost in all likelihood because they just don't have guys that can do too much. Second in a back-to-back, I'm worried about him playing over 30 minutes, but if Ross and Gordon are both out, then he's likely going to be playing that much. So after that, Chris Paul can do anything any given night. He's fine. Had a decent night last night, not great. Brogdon, 1.45x multiplier. Not terribly interested in him. He will play a bunch of minutes, but with Sabonis facilitating a whole bunch and with LeVert coming in there and stealing some of the usage, Brogdon's usage has gone down a bit, and it's just not the same play. I know he had that really bad stretch, and they had a random good game. But with everyone in this offense, with all the mouths to feed, he really does not make my cut at this moment. I might throw him in a game stack where I use Sabonis, Brogdon, Bam, and Butler, but he's just fine. He'd have to get hot shooting, which he absolutely can. He's a great 3-point shooter, and he can end up with more volume. But matchup, everything kind of makes me want to get off of him a little bit. Lowry, multiplier is too low, considering they kept it at the 1.35x for a while because everyone was out. Siakam was out. Van Vliet was out. So not really a guy I'm terribly interested in. Nico is going to be a core play in my lineups today. 2x multiplier. Anytime you can find a guy that's going to get 30-plus minutes, which is likely to happen with Steph out, with Oubre out, him and Poole probably in the starting lineup. We don't really have one right now, and you can wait and see what it's going to be. They can obviously change it around, but the game starts, I think, at lock. So we should have news on that. I'm planning on building most of my lineups right around when lock happens. And Nico, if he's in the starting lineup, I have to assume he's going to get 30 minutes, and it's a matchup versus Memphis. If it stays close, he should crush. Outside of that, Jamal Murray, I think, has some upside. He can get hot shooting the ball. He can absolutely do a ton on this team. It's just he had that crazy streak. Now they're getting a little bit more healthy. He's kind of deferring shots to other guys, but still a guy that I will consider using. Conley, if he plays, not a terrible play. Oladipo, not a terrible play. Unless John Wall plays, then I'm probably staying away from Houston for the most part. I think Wall is currently questionable. We should get news. I know they're trying to tank, but if Wall and Christian Wood and Oladipo and Porter are all playing, going to eat into all their usages, and they're likely guys that I'm going to be off of. Plus, we don't know how many minutes Wall is going to end up playing. Rubio had one big night, and that's been pretty much it. Hasn't shown much of his ceiling since or before. Not really a guy I want to use in tournaments. Van Vliet, worried about how many minutes he's going to play because of that, likely not playing him. McCollum, same thing. Don't know how many minutes he's going to play or if he's even going to play. Likely out on him. Michael Carter-Williams, don't know if he's going to end up playing, out. Ross already mentioned that he can have some big upside if Fournier ends up sitting, if Gordon ends up sitting. He's probably going to end up being one of my core plays. Guys, again, if you have any questions, go ahead and drop them in the chat. We're nearing the end of the show because I've pretty much broken down everything. Levert, fine. Jackson, if he ends up getting some extra run in a blowout, that could be fine. Noel could end up doing something, playing well off the bench, averaging over a point per minute if he gets some extra run tonight. Second him to back-to-back, and they don't really want to play Edwards for 40 minutes. He can end up hitting. Hero mostly for tournaments if Butler ends up missing. Satoransky is interesting. We saw him have a pretty decent night the other night. High multiplier, probably going to get 30-plus minutes. He's been doing that the last 3 games, I think, had over 30 minutes and can play 35 minutes. He's been playing well. He can end up with a decent ceiling. I don't hate him in tournaments, especially as a game stack with Denver. If he keeps playing well, they'll leave him in for a while. But everyone else, like maybe Kevin Porter Jr. if Wall ends up missing, but that's really it. Powell, multiplyer's too low considering all the guys that are being back. It's going to eat into his minutes and his usage quite a bit. All these guys just don't make the cut. They're not great options. Don't offer you enough of a ceiling. As you can see here, after PJ Dozier, no one outside of Winslow, who he'd need to have extra run in a blowout, have over a 50-point ceiling. So all these guys are just kind of out of the conversation. Again, main targets, James Harden, Mitchell, Edwards, and tournaments, Poole, Nico, Fournier potentially, Morant, Lillard, Levine. All those guys are very much in play for tournaments. But that's pretty much today's slate. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you have any questions, go ahead and at me on Twitter or go ahead and drop in the comment section here. Anything you guys want to see in the show going forward, go ahead, let me know in the comment section. But this is pretty much it. I gotta keep doing research today, and then I'm heading up to the mountains for some nice little skiing since we got a blizzard the other day. Who are some of the biggest bust candidates? All right, that's a little bit tough to figure out. So like one of the biggest ways to figure out who's a good bust candidate is like Porzingis, for instance, is a bust candidate because he can end up with a huge ceiling, but he also has a huge or low floor because Luka can just take over the entire game. Jokic could be a blowout, 1x multiplier. That makes it tough if he's not getting a fourth quarter run. He's a potential bust candidate. Poole and Nico, either one of them could end up giving more run to the other guy, and Golden State can do some weird things with the rotation, and this game can end up being a blowout. So all the Golden State guys are potential bust candidates, but they have a high ceiling and they have a high median outcome, hoping that the game ends up staying close, or they just get run later on. Kerr is fully fine with throwing any one of his guys in there for 35 minutes if they're not starters, if they're young guys like Poole or Nico. Aaron Gordon could be limited to 25 minutes on the second end of a back-to-back. He's a potential bust candidate, but again, that's why you're getting a low floor, high ceiling. It's all based on minutes. Fournier can always bust. But like the non-bust candidates are pretty much Harden is potential bust if it's a Kyrie game. Could easily end up being a Kyrie game. But that's pretty much it, guys. Hope you enjoyed the show. It's been fun. We'll be back again on Monday, I believe, breaking down the slate again. Hopefully I see you guys at the top of the leaderboard. Good luck on your contest tonight. I'm out of here. See you, kids.